Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. This is hosted by AGL Lifestyles. My name is Marcus, and today I'm going to be talking about how to overcome social anxiety, and I'm also going to be talking about my story as well. So let's begin, and let me just start with a question. When you were growing up, did you ever feel like people could just push you around? Especially women? Did you ever feel like people just didn't show you any respect? Maybe you knew that you just weren't good with girls, but eventually you'd be able to settle for someone who made you happy. And even if that didn't happen, at least you were smart, have a good job, and make a decent living. And life is more than just about girls, right? But then you still feel envy when you see a couple holding hands when you go to the mall, or when you go to the movies, or when you see a girl resting her head on her boyfriend's shoulder. But the guy doesn't even seem to care. Then you think, if she was my girlfriend, I would actually appreciate her. Plus, that guy probably has some mediocre job as a waiter, but I actually make a decent salary at a major tech company as an engineer. I got good grades at a difficult school, and I work hard to excel in my career. She deserves better. I used to feel the same way. When I was growing up, I was insecure about my looks, and I thought that no girl would ever like me, in spite of the fact that I played sports, I got good grades, I did well in school, I was respectful to people. I just didn't understand why girls didn't like me. So let's rewind back to my high school experience, and then I'll tell you how everything unfolded in my life. So I went to high school from 2004 to 2008, and at the age of 18, I was pretty nerdy. I was really shy, and it was to the point where whenever I talked, people would say, "Oh shit, like Marcus is actually talking." They were surprised when I opened my mouth. That's how quiet I was. I spent more time in video games than in real life. I didn't really get any attention from women, and I had my first girlfriend at 18. And I was also religious. So after high school, I went to university from ages 18 to 23, and I went to a Mormon school. So on top of the fact that I had zero experience with women, I went to a Mormon school where you're not even allowed to make out excessively or even touch one another. They call it petting. So it was pretty extreme. I was a nerd, I was a math major, and I minored in economics and philosophy. And a lot of my insecurity, I was able to cover up with my intelligence and my academic performance. So at that point, I was still a virgin, and I didn't have any dates during my time in college. Now in summer of 2011, which was midway through my college experience, I went to study abroad in Europe at the age of 21. That's when I started going out, and I had a roommate who was very naturally good with women. And so I had this flawed paradigm of attraction because I saw him go out, and he was able to talk to people in an easygoing way, but he was also tall, he was white, he was going to law school. So he had all these things going for him. And I thought that girls were attracted to looks, money, education, and talent. I didn't understand that attraction is actually emotional, not just logical. It's not like you hand a girl a resume and then suddenly she decides whether she likes you or not. It doesn't work that way. So here's my ego-shattering moment. So I actually thought that I was decent with women at the time. I had this expectation that since I was smart, athletic, respectful, and talented, that girls would like me. But here's the reality. The girls on the trip during my study abroad put together this list, and they ranked the guys on the trip according to how attractive they are. And so I fully expected to be at the top of the list, but when I asked one of the girls where I was, I found out that I was actually at the very bottom of the list. I was heartbroken, and my rationale was I just wasn't good looking, and white girls don't like Asian guys. Now, I went back to the US after my study abroad, and I had this starting belief that white girls don't like Asian guys. So this came about from my insecurity. I went online and I searched this. I said, why don't white girls like Asian guys in YouTube? And I found this video, and it was about attraction. And I actually learned that you can become more attractive through developing social skills. I didn't realize that. I thought attraction was intrinsic, that you couldn't control it at all. You couldn't control it through behavior or learning social savvy or social intelligence or emotional intelligence, which I later found out to be true. So after learning this, I decided to dedicate myself to improve my skills with women, because I found out that it was a controllable way to be able to attract the women that you truly get along with. After I graduated from college, which was in August 2013, my stepfather passed away a couple months later. And so I moved back to LA. I ended up dropping out of grad school, which was in November of 2014, shortly after moving back to LA and going out. And so I went to grad school in Dallas in August 2014. I was depressed. November 2014, I dropped out, headed back to LA, and I saw this spontaneous Facebook post, and it was from a coach. He was a dating coach, or actually assisting for a popular dating coach for a popular dating company. And he basically said that he was going to Vegas within the next few hours, and he asked, if anyone wants to come, you can join me, but you have to respond now. And I decided, you know what, I just dropped out of grad school, fuck it, I'm gonna go with him. So I responded back, and I ended up going with him to Vegas. And I was actually the only one who followed through on that post. So he promised to coach me. He coached me while I was in Vegas, and he became my new mentor. He invited me to a meetup in Hollywood. I went there. We talked about dating and attraction and sex. And he recommended to me that he saw that I didn't really have much direction in my life. So he told me that I should go to Santa Barbara, just go alone, don't bring, just bring my phone in case I need it, but put it in the trunk, just bring a pad of paper and a pen and write down my thoughts. So I took a trip to Santa Barbara, and I spent the night there sleeping in my car along the beach, and I wrote down my thoughts and came back with a new mentality. Basically, I wouldn't complain, I would take action, and I would do it immediately. Pretty simple, but I later realized that this is the success mentality. This is the mentality that's necessary in order to achieve success in your life. And as a result, I got new results. I moved to Vegas in February 2015, so basically I just burned the boats. I quit my 3 jobs that I was working at the time to stay with my mentor in Hollywood. He was living in an apartment there, and I was paying a pretty exorbitant rent, but I thought it was necessary for me to grow. So I did what it took, and I worked 3 jobs at the time. But then I quit my jobs, I sold my car, I put down a deposit for my unfurnished apartment in Vegas, and then I was down to my last $21. It was a bit rough at first, and by my second week, I had $8 left on Tuesday, but fortunately I landed a job where I was going door to door, handing out flyers for a political candidate who was running for city council, and I was getting paid that Friday. I lived off of sunflower seeds and chicken nuggets for that week, and by Friday, I had $1.82. But I felt so fortunate and grateful that I was able to actually make it happen, that I was able to make it out to Vegas. I had my own apartment. In spite of the fact that I was unfurnished, I was sleeping on the floor. I was grateful for the fact that I was able to make it through that week. I slept 2 to 3 hours a night, sometimes 45 minutes because of my job. And after the first month, my boss donated his furniture from the election campaign from the office to me because he no longer needed it. And I finally had a steady income. So I felt relieved. That summer, I landed a coaching internship with a popular dating and lifestyle advice company. And I just grinded it out. I went out for 55 days straight because this dating company in particular advocated going out to nightclubs and bars to refine your social skills. So I just went out every single fucking night. I wasn't getting paid, but I was willing to put in the work in order to make it happen. And I became fully immersed in coaching. August of that summer, I discovered something. In August of 2015, I began pushing my social interactions to the next level. And so what do I mean by that? Basically, I mean, I visualized certain things happening in social experiences to the point where I could actually persuade and shape the social interaction in the way I wanted to happen. And so during my experimentation, I discovered an underlying principle of social dynamics that changed my interactions and accelerated my results with women. So I had more dates and more sex with women during that summer than I ever had in my life. And so let me talk about the results that I had. Basically, women would leave the club with me within 10 to 15 minutes. And I understand that for some of you, you might think this is pretty superficial. One night stands isn't really my thing. And at the time, I was fully immersed in learning this skill set. Now I'm at a different place where I'm not so much into the one night stand sort of scene, but this was important to me for my social development and also becoming comfortable with myself sexually. So I was able to reach the point where women would leave the club with me within 10 to 15 minutes. And after months of using my new method, I began teaching it in 2016, and my students saw incredible results as well. And I'll talk about that later too. But like I was saying, I experienced this emptiness. So in spite of a more active sex life, I found the whole pickup culture and endeavor to get laid vapid and unfulfilling. So I stopped coaching in 2016 in August and became a nightclub promoter. So this took my focus off of just having sex, and instead I focused more on my social skills, which I still wanted to cultivate. But instead of having to teach guys how to get laid on a daily basis, this was more about just talking to women, talking to guys even, and having fun, being able to relate to people on a more emotional level. But because I had social anxiety, I relied heavily on smoking, alcohol, drugs, and other substances to cover up my social anxiety. So as a result, I left Vegas and traveled to Thailand in February 2017. I did a meditation retreat. So you can observe that in my life, I've had very extreme shifts where I've gone from religious Mormon school to living in Vegas and living a debaucherous lifestyle to going to Thailand immediately and doing a meditation retreat. So I've oscillated from one category to the other, but this was necessary for me. So during my meditation retreat, everything was stripped away from me. I didn't have my phone, no girls to talk to, no communication with the outside world whatsoever. And I realized that my constant pursuit to get laid wasn't bringing me lasting happiness. So during the retreat, I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. And this really uncovered the things that were underlying in my subconscious. So I discovered a method that provided me with internal fulfillment and results, which is what I wanted. I wanted to marry the two. Now let me talk about how this works. So first, let me talk about how real change happens. Just by learning lines and techniques, you might be getting superficial short-term results, but you'll never build a true life of abundance. So what I mean by that is a lot of times guys will try to go out and learn lines. They'll ask you like, oh, what's the best thing to ask a girl or say to a girl when you first talk to her? Honestly, it doesn't really fucking matter. What matters more is the vibe that you carry with it, the place it's coming from. Are you actually wanting to talk to her? Are you wanting to connect with her? Or is it more just because you think she's hot and you feel obligated to talk to her? That's really where the difference maker is. And so real change happens through emotions, not just logic or knowledge or intellect. A lot of guys think, oh, if I accumulate more knowledge about what to say, then I'll become a wizard at social puppetry. And that's just not how it works. The actual way it works, especially when it comes to socially interacting with girls, is to relate to them on an emotional level. It doesn't make sense to try to relate to them on a more content-based logical level because, you know, they're more connected with their emotions than we are. So we should recognize that and run with it. Don't try to fight against that. And so since real change happens through emotions, this is why people have a hard time dieting. They intellectually know that food is bad for them, but they still are tempted to cheat. Why is that? Well, because humans make decisions based on their emotions, they respond emotionally to the food. So instead of thinking logically, they're thinking emotionally. There's emotional insecurities and trigger points where they suddenly have the urge to get another potato chip or to grab a candy bar, etc. As T. Harv Eker says, when the subconscious mind must choose between deeply rooted emotions and logic, emotions will almost always win. And in order to have lasting change, you have to reprogram your emotions first. So if you dive straight into technical knowledge, you might see short-term results, meaning you might hook up more, maybe you have better responses from women, but the change wouldn't be permanent. Eventually, if you get into a relationship, they're going to see your insecurities. It's going to come to the surface. You can't keep up the charade forever. You have to have some underlying identity level change. So here's the process for change: awareness, mindset shift, behavioral change, and then identity level assimilation. So awareness is where you start by acknowledging your issues. You first have to know that you have an issue or insecurity with something before you can begin to fix it. That seems pretty obvious. Now, mindset shift is you decide to change your mentality about it. You take a proactive mentality to wanting to change that part of yourself. The behavioral change is where the real work is done. So you take the action and you begin to see positive results. And the behavioral change is where you take that intellectual knowledge and you turn it into emotional, you actually have emotional feedback from that. So you start to associate certain results with certain feelings. And now identity level assimilation is where your emotional disposition towards that issue shifts. So yeah, you begin to do these things and you begin to see different results. And now you start to feel positive when you talk to someone. You start to feel positive when you exercise. And so you go from doing to actually being. So here's an example of the change. Let's say that you're 50 pounds overweight. Your awareness of the issue is, I need to lose weight. Your mindset shift is, I will stop eating junk food and start working out 4 days per week. This is what you tell yourself. Now, your behavioral change is that you actually stop eating junk food and you start working out 4 days per week. Now, over time, you no longer crave junk food and you go to the gym every other day without even thinking about it because it feels good. So how do you change your emotions? Now that you understand that it's important, how do you actually go about changing it, especially when it comes to social interaction? And now I have something called the 4A framework. And basically it's anxiety, apathy, ambivalence, and arousal. So first, I want you to imagine this. Whenever you are excited to talk to someone, do you feel anxious? And when you're talking to them, do they feel anxious? My guess is that you probably don't. So when you're excited to actually talk to someone, like your friend, you wouldn't feel anxious talking to them. And they wouldn't feel anxious talking to you because they're wanting to talk to you as well, usually. Now, generally, anxiety and arousal are inversely related, meaning that if you want to talk to someone, you're probably not going to be anxious while talking to them. And plus, how you feel, the other person will feel as well. So we usually begin from a place of anxiety. For example, approach anxiety. There's other examples as well. So there's more general social anxiety. There's kissing anxiety, sexual anxiety, going for the number anxiety. This is in particular when it comes to girls or even when it comes to networking. But basically, by placing ourselves into the situation and overcoming it, we start to become numb to it. So at first, because it's a novel situation, we don't really know how it's going to go. We're afraid to venture into that. So the first time you take a girl's number, it's going to be scary as hell. But over time, you're going to become more comfortable with it. So we start to attain a state of apathy. And apathy is essentially you're comfortable with doing the action, but you aren't necessarily inspired to do it. So if someone told you, hey, try to go get that girl's number, you wouldn't feel much anxiety doing it, but you wouldn't really feel the desire to do so or feel self-motivated to do it. Now, here's the danger. Over time, if you continue to act apathetically and you continue to get negative feedback, you're going to reach a state of disillusionment. So this is kind of like learned helplessness in psychology, where if you continue to go through the motions and maybe you're comfortable with talking to someone, but you start to see that you're never getting the number or nothing's ever transpiring as a result of you going for something, then you're not going to feel any sort of motivation to do it. You're going to start to feel jaded towards that action. And kind of like learned helplessness, you're going to stop wanting to do it altogether. Now, the alternative is arousal. This is when you continually receive positive feedback, and thus you'll want to do the action. So here's how it goes. You start with anxiety, you go to apathy, and you either go to ambivalence, which is you don't want to do the action anymore, or you go to arousal, which is you're actually inspired to do the action. So going from anxiety to apathy is the first step. You want to put yourself in high pressure situations and overcome them. In yoga, there's something called Nadis, and these are energetic channels in your nervous system. So this is a bit spiritual, just bear with me here for a second. These Nadis control the energy flow through your body. Most people have blocked Nadis, and this results in anxiety. So the more times that you put yourself in an anxious situation and you don't take action on it, it's just going to build up the blockage in your energy channels. And so the way to resolve this is by putting yourself in a yoga asana. So this is in yoga theory, and breathing. So you put yourself into these contortions, and by breathing, it's essentially like flowing water through a pipe. You're busting through by increasing the water pressure through the blue. So your breathing pressure is like the water pressure. You're breathing through these energy channels and you're unclogging your nadis. So what I do is I put you through social asanas or social challenges, and I unblock your emotional nadis. This is the approach that I take. And this is going from anxiety to apathy. Now, how do you prevent ambivalence? So this is extremely important, because if you become disillusioned by approaching, then you're never going to do it ever again, which is not good. So don't throw yourself into the deep end without any guidance. This will only create bad habits and emotional traumas. So no matter how many techniques you learn, your emotional traumas still exist in your subconscious. In order to go from apathy to arousal, then, you have to release from your emotional traumas and reprogram your subconscious. Basically, you want to put yourself in positive social situations. You want to take into account your strengths, preferences, and personality, and then break down your remaining anxieties using the Eagle process. So the Eagle process is something that I've come up with. Basically, what I do is I ask you, how does that emotional situation, or sorry, that social situation make you feel emotionally? So let's say I tell you to approach that girl and take her number. How does that make you feel? Do you start to feel anxious? Do you start to feel nervous? And when are other moments in your life that you felt that emotion? Think back to your childhood. Think back to your high school days. Were there moments where maybe you were rejected and you never wanted to approach a girl ever again? Were there emotional pains when you're being made fun of on the playground? Think back to the very first time you felt that emotion. It's important to trace it all the way back to the first moment, because these are the root causes of your emotional traumas. Now write all of this down. Write down how you felt, these past experiences, and the very first moment you felt it. Now, what we want to do is reprogram the subconscious. So come up with sentiments or beliefs that run counter to these initial irrational beliefs that you hold within your subconscious. What you want to do is repeat these beliefs on a daily basis. And this isn't a once and for all solution to this problem. You also have to take action on this, but this will aid your subconscious in visualizing your alternative reality. You want to shape your life path so that you become a different person from your core being. You want to reshape the way you feel. Now, when it comes to talking to girls, you can reshape the way you feel, but at the end of the day, they have their own feelings and identities and beliefs as well. So you have to be empathetic to their course of anxiety, apathy, ambivalence, and arousal too. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to act based on my own emotions and have these visualizations and affirmations. You also have to be aware of how she's feeling, and not everything is going to go your way. Just realize that the universe is inherently uncontrollable. Accept that as a fact, and you'll move forward in a more healthy fashion. What is unhealthy is when you start to believe that you can control and manipulate every single social situation that comes your way. So when you're talking to a woman, you have to allow her to go from anxiety, apathy, and proceed to arousal. So just be empathetic and address her concerns and feels. So this is how she feels. Sometimes she'll be anxious if you approach her too aggressively or unexpectedly. Then she'll feel physically threatened and she'll try to escape that situation. When it comes to ambivalence, if you're awkward and you make her feel uncomfortable, she'll try to be dismissive. Let me fast forward back to this. She'll try to be dismissive or ignore you and try to get rid of you. So maybe she'll give some nervous laughter, but she'll eventually say, hey, I have to go to the bathroom, or my friends are calling me. She'll try to escape that situation as well. Now, when it comes to apathy, maybe you're pleasant, but not too engaging. You just interview her politely. Where are you from? What do you do? But you're socially calibrated. Then she'll talk to you temporarily until she finds something better to do. So this isn't really going anywhere. And this is actually the most pernicious of the 4 states. So basically, if you're in this state, you'll get a lot of positive reactions, but you'll never know when to move it forward, because you'll realize, oh, I could stay here forever. I'm in this limbo, this purgatory of social interaction, and things seem to be going pleasantly until she's trying to find ways to escape, or she's not necessarily trying to find ways to escape actively, but when someone invites her to do something else, and maybe another guy who's more interesting comes by and he takes her away, and you're just left with your heart in your hands, then you're gonna feel like shit. So what's important to realize is how to allow her to reach a state of arousal. So if she likes you, then she will want you to make a move. And the way to allow her to reach a state of arousal is to be emotionally provocative. So how do we go to arousal instead of ambivalence? Now, sometimes a girl will be attracted to you, but she'll lose that over time. And this is what happens. So what separates guys who allow her to go into arousal instead of ambivalence is making a move, especially at the right time. Now, if a guy doesn't make a move or waits too long, then she starts to become apathetic and eventually ambivalent. So she just won't be into him anymore, and she'll just put you in the friend zone. So what is the actual practical steps that you can take to change this process? So the first step is visualization. Have a clear vision of the outcome you desire. Secondly, take action. This will calibrate your expectations to reality. So just by visualizing, that's not good enough. You also obviously have to take action on that. And then thirdly, let go. You want to have a clear vision of the outcome, but you want to let go of the means to get there. So it's kind of like what Machiavelli says, the ends justify the means. It's not all about getting your way in the way, exactly the way you want it. It's like the method has to follow your steps. There's going to be curveballs thrown at you. You have to roll with the punches. Just go with the waves. And as long as you're directionally comported towards your outcome, you're going to see opportunities that maybe didn't arise before, or maybe you didn't expect, and you just take those opportunities. It's kind of like when you are doing jujitsu, you're not necessarily planning out every single move, but you have a direction for where you want to take the rolling. So maybe you're going for a triangle, but then you see that your opponent is defending the triangle, then you can turn that into an armbar, etc. You just have to roll with the punches. So when it comes to letting go, if you let go of your anxieties, then you can press forward without emotional resistance. And that's the most important step. What most guys realize is that if you know what you want, you can just go for it. Like, you can just go forward and take it. If you know you want to take a girl home, then all you have to do is take her by the hand and start walking for the exit. When I realized this, that's when I started taking girls home within 10 to 15 minutes. This was my major realization. I started visualizing it happening. I started taking action on it. And I started releasing from the emotional resistance of it over time. And what is the result of this? You'll be able to connect with people from a place of desire rather than desperation or obligation. So desire meaning that you want to do it rather than you need to do it or you're supposed to do it. Basically, you're both enjoying the interaction. Now, how do I speed up my progress when it comes to my social development, when it comes to letting go of my social anxiety? The first thing you want to do is track your progress. So you want to write down and journal how you feel when you go out, when you talk to people. You want to do this so that you're making progress. And it's kind of like with any sort of endeavor. If you track your weight, you're eventually going to lose weight. If you track the way you feel during social interactions, you're eventually going to feel less and less anxious because, first of all, you're releasing a lot of that emotional anxiety onto the paper, into a physical instantiation of your thoughts. And secondly, you're going to be able to course correct as you go on during your journey. The second thing you want to do is incredibly important, is find like-minded peers. If you find guys who are naturally good with women, or naturally socially engaging, or charismatic, then you're going to inculcate those behaviors within your own identity. That's going to become part of you over time. So this is incredibly important. And I'd say if you can't do, let's say you can only do one of these three things, do this one first. Find like-minded peers. And thirdly, have a mentor. Find someone who can help you through it, who's been through this process and can give you some direction on your journey. So now I have a special offer for you. So basically, I've created an 8-week program designed to get you the results that you want in your dating and sex life and your relationships. So in the past, I've taught students my system and they've gotten solid results. And basically what I wanted to do with this program is do exactly what I talked about on the previous slide, which is I make you track your progress on a daily basis. I give you like-minded peers who are going through the journey with you, who are ambitious, who actually want to improve. And then I'm also here to mentor you. And I also have a few other coaches who I've handpicked to mentor you as well. So here's some results that past students have gotten and some feedback that I've received as well as a mentor. So this is one of my former students from last year. He talked about, let me just skim through this. I don't want to read the whole thing necessarily, but he requested help from me directly. And he said that, so he was Asian as well. And he had a lot of insecurities about his height and his ethnicity. And same sort of thing that I had growing up. I thought because I was Asian, because I was short, like girls just didn't like me. And so basically I taught him that, so he talks about how I guarantee that he would pull with my method without a doubt. And the method I taught him was this emotional release process. But you had to do the emotional release from a place of action-oriented engagement, and you have to do that immediately. It's not about waiting, it's about going for what you want first, recalibrating the situation, and releasing from the emotion subsequently. Using this method, he pulled within 30 minutes of cold approaching a girl. So his goal in particular was to be able to cold approach a girl in a nightclub and be able to take her home. And he was able he went from not ever doing that in his life to be able to do that within 30 minutes. And with consistent practice, he was able to see the signs of when a girl is hooked and engaged with the conversation and when she is ready to go home with him. He also talked about how he gained insight about my intensity and my determination for you to improve. And essentially my motto is high risk, high reward. You just fucking go for what you want, period. Too many guys try to construct this method, this procedure, this process that's intricate, where they have an X, Y, and Z delineation of what to do in this scenario, in this scenario, in this scenario. But what it comes down to is, what do you want? What is the outcome that you want to achieve? How do you go for that in a way, in the most direct way possible? And how do you emotionally release from your anxieties? Because what happens when you emotionally release from these anxieties is that you start to go for things immediately. And so, all right, so that's that student that I had last year. Over the past year, I've had about 50 students, and 70 to 80% of them, so I think it was 76% of them, ended up pulling from the nightclub. So this is what I coached before, is how to pull from the nightclub, how to take a girl home from cold approach situations where you've never met the girl before, you walk up to her, you start a conversation, then she wants to go home with you. And that's what I taught. And it was in the range from 70 to 80% where my students on program would take a girl home. And what I do is I continue to work with my students until they're able to achieve the results that they want. And so here's another student that I coached from last year. He texted me and he told me that my style of game, so game meaning that basically when I was in the whole pickup culture, game meant, you know, my way of socially interacting with women. And he said that I was ruthlessly efficient. And basically the method that I taught to him, it's not so much a method, it's more a mentality and a way of releasing from your emotional anxiety. And when he did this, he took a girl home within, it was about 15 minutes. We went to one of the nightclubs in Vegas, and then he went from starting a conversation to out the exits on his motorbike with the girl on the back of his motorbike within 15 minutes, and that was it. He ended up hooking up with her. So here's my offer to you. I've created an 8-week transformational program that includes a group chat, daily accountability, and mentorship with multiple coaches who are successful in relationships, business, and health. So why is this program so effective? Well, Jim Rohn says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So basically, if you join this community, you're guaranteed to join a community of ambitious hustlers who are on top of their game. But here's a warning. I don't accept everyone. It's a simple course, and each step is clearly laid out, but only certain people will get results, so I only want to invite those who I guarantee results for. Every single person that joins this program will get results, but I have to make sure that you're the right kind of person for this program. So you must be humble and open-minded, patient, a good listener, and an action taker. These are critical for you to have in order to be part of this program. And if you are overly skeptical and set in your ways, negative and self-victimizing, and lacking in discipline and are never on time, then please don't apply. I will not work with you. I'm happy to help you in other ways because over time, you can become the kind of person who's on top of their game. But it's a process. When I started, I was actually all of these things, honestly. I was overly skeptical, I was stubborn, I was self-victimizing, I thought the world was out to get me, I was lacking in discipline in a lot of areas of my life. But over time, I learned these skills, and even though this program isn't for you right off the bat, contact me. I want to work with you in other ways to get you to the point where you can join this program. Because this is the only way I can guarantee results for every student in the program. I want a certain culture for the program, I want a certain culture for each class, and I want to make sure that every student gets results. So if you're interested in signing up, I'll send you an email and just respond to that email and we'll schedule a follow-up call. So that's pretty much it for the actual course content part of the webinar. Now I'll start to take questions. Let me check the comments. Let's see. So if you have any comments or questions, just type them in the group chat. It's on the sidebar in the Google Hangout. Let's see. I just typed it right now. Can you guys see that? Yeah, just type something in the sidebar if you can see. Then I'll field your questions as well. Hi. Okay. Let's see. Or is there a group chat thing in the side? So if there's a group chat thing on the left side, click on that and then just respond with yes if you can see what I'm typing in the sidebar. Or let's see. Or if you comment on the YouTube video, then I'll answer questions there as well. Or if you comment on the YouTube video, then I'll. You guys have any questions? Hey, someone else. All right, so if you have any questions, just comment on the side. Otherwise, I'll send you a follow-up email and you can ask me any further questions or have any, if you have any other comments, then just let me know there. But thanks for joining, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.